Which Dynasty players have fallen the most in value over the last 30 days? We're talking about that in today's video. As always, like and subscribe to the channel. We are 8 subscribers away, I believe, from 500. Help us get there, hopefully, with this video. If you don't know already, I already put out one of these videos of the biggest risers. I put it out yesterday, August 1st, the biggest risers in Dynasty over the last 30 days. This is the biggest fallers in Dynasty over the last 30 days. This is according to KeepTradeCut's 30-day trend. So KeepTradeCut, it's not a perfect website, but it gives you a decent feel on how people are, it gives you a decent feel on the Dynasty market and how people are perceiving certain players, who's rising and who's falling, right? And I think it's good to do these. I'm going to be putting these out at the beginning of every single month. It's good to analyze, well, why is this happening? Why are these players rising or falling? Is it justified? Is it just smoke? So we're starting off with the quarterback position. Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco has fallen from QB 53 to QB 58. Generally, there's not a whole lot of movement with quarterbacks, especially during the offseason. I know it's kind of preseason stuff, but during season it does move, but in the offseason and preseason it doesn't move a whole lot just because quarterback is generally a more stable position. But Joe Flacco has fallen 5 spots. Not 100% sure why. I think it's maybe more other players moving up rather than Flacco moving down potentially. But only news I could really find about Flacco was that he went to go to Jacoby Jones's funeral. Rest in peace, Jacoby Jones. And he was excused from practice to go do that. But that shouldn't really drop his value at all. Joe Flacco, I've been telling people, Joe Flacco needs to be rostered. I saw people drop him in some leagues. I did a couple dynasty startups this offseason, and I'm like, well, I'm going to draft him at the end of the draft and pick him up because he's the backup to Anthony Richardson. And what's the worry of Anthony Richardson is, can he stay healthy? The guy got hurt 3 times in 5 games or whatever it was last year. Not that I hope that he gets hurt. I hope he stays healthy. But if Joe Flacco had to take over for the Colts, he's going to do very similar things to what he did with the Browns last year, which won people dynasty and fantasy redraft leagues. So Joe Flacco needs to be rostered as the backup to Anthony Richardson, especially if you have Anthony Richardson. Jimmy G is another one that's dropped from QB 56 to QB 63. Once again, not 100% sure why. I know he has this suspension. I think it's a 2-game suspension, which I'm not really that worried about. To me, he's the QB2. He's the backup to Stafford. And if something happens to Stafford, which has in the last 2 years now, I think we have 2 years in a row where Stafford's missed time. I fully expect Jimmy Garoppolo to go in there and put up decent fantasy numbers just because of the offense he's in. I want the backup quarterback. I want almost every backup quarterback should be taken. In my opinion, in Superflex leagues, they should be rostered. Baker Mayfield with the Rams came out and looked decent, which is maybe why he got a job with the Buccaneers when he took over for the Rams. I especially want these backup quarterbacks that are on really good offenses. I really want them. And I think Jimmy G, if something happens to Stafford, will come in and put up just like solid, low-end QB2 numbers. And that has some value in Superflex leagues. Moving on to the running back position, Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller has fallen a lot from 29 to 41. And I'm just double checking. He's actually down to 42 now. So he's fallen 13 spots, which is pretty significant considering he was all the way up at 29. Kendre Miller, obviously, he got hurt the first practice. That's kind of been his MO shortly in his career. Unfortunately, a lot of people like him, think he's a talented player. But this is the perfect example of maybe we need to capitalize on value when we can, especially with running backs, because they're so volatile, guys. Kendre Miller at one point in this offseason was the RB26. The RB26. And he didn't do anything. He's the RB26 for not really what he did on the field, but more about what we expect him to do in 2024. And sometimes you need to capitalize on those things. Are you going to lose out sometimes and you're going to, trade someone away who has a good season? Of course. But more often than not, you're going to put your value, you're going to put your assets into things that are not as volatile, like draft picks. If you get a second round pick, a random second round pick for Kendre Miller, that's only going to rise. That value of the pick is only going to go up all the way until your rookie drafts happen. So it's about learning how to, capitalize on when players are at their peak value potentially, and investing in assets that are more stable, that aren't going to fall and are only going to rise. So Kendre Miller, I hope he can get healthy, but it's a hamstring injury. If he misses a couple weeks, guys, don't expect him to do anything until October. Hopefully he can get back quickly, though. Maybe he's already back and I just missed that news. Kamani Vidal has fallen. This was for a couple reasons. I think he's fallen even more as well, Kamani Vidal. No, 6 spots. He's down to RB 50. I know it came out with their depth chart that who was it? I believe it was he was like third or fourth on the depth chart, behind Gus Edwards, behind J.K. Dobbins, and there was another player that I'm forgetting that potentially he was behind. I'm just pulling up the Chargers. Jarrett Patterson, that's who it was. Jarrett Patterson, which is concerning if he's going to be behind Jarrett Patterson. Harbaugh and Greg Roman strike me as the kind of coaches that really want their rookies to prove it, and they really need them to be reliable. And they don't need them to fumble. They need them to make the right decisions, find the hole, get the hard yards. And so, Kamani Vidal is definitely going to need to prove it with the Chargers and prove it to Harbaugh and Greg Roman that he can, that he can carry the load. I still like Kamani Vidal. I think you got hurt in Thursday's practice, so I'm not sure what the injury was. But I've been kind of in on Kamani Vidal since February when I started researching these rookies heavily and these prospects. So I'm still kind of in on Kamani Vidal, but yeah, I mean, it's justified that he's dropped a little bit, but I'm not doing anything. If I drafted him, I'm just holding. I'm not freaking out. Antonio Gibson is another one that has fallen from RB 53 to RB 63. Again, not 100% sure why. I think this is coming off of the news of the Ramondre Stevenson signing, because that happened in the month of July. So that would take that into account a little bit. Nothing's really changed for me in terms of how I view Antonio Gibson just because Stevenson got the contract. I still think Gibson's going to be their third down back, most likely. He has a chance to catch a lot of passes. Also, Patriots offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt, comes from the Browns system. And what are the Browns known for? Using 2 running backs. Even when they had a prime Nick Chubb, they were consistently using Kareem Hunt a lot. So I think Antonio Gibson is actually going to do decent. I'm not saying you should buy him or sell him or whatever. But I think he could have some decent weeks and just be in deeper fantasy leagues, dynasty leagues, be a potential flex play because of his, especially in PPR leagues, because of his catching ability. Moving on to the wide receivers, Quentin Johnston, man, he just keeps falling down from 64 to 77. Obviously, the reports coming out that he's probably not even going to be in 3 wide receiver sets. And it kind of makes sense, guys. Obviously, Josh Palmer's going to be out there. DJ Shark kind of fits that X wide receiver position a little bit better. He just does things that maybe Quentin Johnston's not ready to do. Maybe his run blocking. He can obviously stretch the field, which is valuable to an offense. You need people that run clear out routes, right? There's going to be several wide receivers this year that are playing 90% of the snaps who don't really do much production-wise, but their job is more to run these clear out routes. Guys like Alec Pierce, right? Alec Pierce ran, I think, the most routes in the NFL last year and had 500 yards because he fills the role that, that sometimes an X receiver has to do, whether or not it's producing numbers-wise. That doesn't mean they're not valuable to the offense. So it sounds like it's going to be Palmer, DJ Shark, and then Ladd McConkey in the slot. And man, the fall for Quentin Johnston just keeps happening. Now, he's at the point where I'm not selling him because I used a first-round rookie pick on him. So I'm not selling him whatsoever. Not selling him, 100%. I'm not saying to go out and buy him, but he's at the point where his value is so low now. It's if you can get him as a throw-in, you're getting some potential upside there, right? A former first-round pick who has the tools, guys. He has the tools to be a good receiver. He just needs to put all that other stuff together. So again, he's at the point where like I don't hate it if you just want to buy low on him, but I don't know. I'm not expecting too much from Quentin Johnston. A.T. Perry is on this list. It's fallen from 90 to 97. Again, I don't really know why. I think this is just when you get down to this range, guys are going to go up and down because, these are all dart throw guys. I kind of like A.T. Perry. I've liked him since scouting him last year for the draft. Thought that he had a potential chance. I thought he was a developmental receiver, but I thought he had the tools to develop into kind of a all-around outside X receiver. And what I've been saying about A.T. Perry is that to me, you have Chris Olave, who's going to be kind of that movable piece on the Saints offense. You have Rashid Shaheed, who can play in the slot and maybe be a vertical slot player. And then you have whoever's going to play the X receiver spot for the Saints. And I think that comes down to players like Cedric Wilson, Bub Means, Equanimous St. Brown, A.T. Perry. So it's a training camp battle to watch potentially to see who's going to win that. There's a chance that A.T. Perry's out there and plays 80% of the snaps as the X receiver for the Saints. And there could be value there. There definitely could be value there. Moving right along, one last receiver here is A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell, not a huge A.D. Mitchell fan. I liked Xavier Worthy much, much better. I'm not 100% sure why he's fallen from 43 to 47. It's not a huge drop. It could be more, again, just other people moving up rather than him moving down. Just looking at some of the players that have moved ahead of him, Marquise Brown, Chris Godwin, I think, has moved ahead of him at this point. So, I don't know. Like, he's in that second tier of rookie wide receivers, maybe third tier rookie wide receivers that, they have a chance to produce this year. Do I think it's going to happen with A.D. Mitchell? No. Not in terms of like for fantasy success, but I can't ignore the fact that this guy might be out there on a team that I like offensively. I love Shane Steichen, and he could be out there 90% of the time like Alec Pierce was, and he could just be good and, have a solid rookie season. So not a whole lot to say here. Don't think you can really capitalize on that. And then for tight ends, again, there's not a huge movement in the top tight ends at all. Luke Musgrave has fallen from 15 to 18. Again, not really sure why. I always thought Luke Musgrave was a little bit overvalued, like all the way up at tight end 15 when he hasn't really done that much. And he has another tight end who could just be better than him in Tucker Kraft. Now, I believe Tucker Kraft had an injury, if I remember correctly. I believe he had an injury like when he was doing bench pressing. So I don't know if he's back yet. That could be good for Luke Musgrave and give him kind of that solid handle on the tight end position. But Luke Musgrave, like if he keeps falling, he starts to become a value, right? So he's in that range of tight ends where like yeah, they could do something, but I'm not going to go out and like spend a bunch to get Luke Musgrave. The fact that he's still ranked ahead of Dallas Goedert, though, is ridiculous, in my opinion. Dallas Goedert is so undervalued. It's ridiculous. Daniel Bellinger. Daniel Bellinger from 26 to 30. Again, not 100% sure why Daniel Bellinger has fallen. Is it just Theo Johnson? Like, people are more excited about Theo Johnson? I think there's a decent chance. Like, the reason why tight ends don't do a lot their rookie year is because they need to be relied upon to block. If you're not going to be able to block in run blocking, pass blocking, you're not going to be out there. Teams are going to value that. Like, you have wide receivers, especially if you're not like this amazing pass catching guy. You have wide receivers to catch passes, running backs to catch passes. If you're not going to block, you're not going to be out there. So they're going to put guys like Daniel Bellinger. If he can block better than Theo Johnson, he's going to be out there more. And he's like a sneaky, you want to just like stream a tight end. You want to trade a top tight end, get a lot of value for him, and just like plug in Daniel Bellinger. There's a chance that Daniel Bellinger has like a decent season this year. So like at that tight end 30 value, I don't hate it, especially if he's going to keep falling. We'll see what Theo Johnson does in preseason though. Maybe there was something that came out with Theo Johnson. I know he's an athletic freak, but well, I just see the first thing I type in, Theo Johnson news. Giants Brian Daboll expects Gronk-like dominance from Theo Johnson. So he's comparing him to Rob Gronkowski. So that's going to bump up Theo Johnson's value like incredibly. That happened a day ago, 1 or 2 days ago. So expect Theo Johnson to be on this next one of the risers. And then the last one's Luke Schoonmaker from 32 to 40. And I get it. He's, he was a second round pick last year, but Jake Ferguson kind of has the handle on that tight end room. Luke Schoonmaker is not going to do anything if Jake Ferguson is healthy. But that being said, I don't think guys like, look at the Cowboys tight end production with Dak Prescott. You had an old Jason Witten, right? You had a very old Jason Witten. What was Jason Witten's last year? Like 2016, 2017, Jason Witten catches 70 passes for 600 yards, 63 passes for 550 yards. That's streamable, startable, low-end tight end numbers. You had an old Jason Witten. You had a Dalton Schultz who, had good seasons. He was a 4th-round pick. Had an 80-catch, 800-yard season with the Cowboys. And then now you have Jake Ferguson, right? Jake Ferguson, who was also a 4th-round pick and just had a 70-catch, 750-yard season. What I'm trying to get at here is that it's not like the Cowboys tight end since this iteration of the Cowboys with Dak Prescott has been this amazing, athletic, super talented player, but they've been really good for fantasy. Really, really good for fantasy. Low-end tight end 1 stuff, even as high as like a mid tight end 1 with Dalton Schultz that 1 year. So what I'm getting at is, if something were to happen to Jake Ferguson, I would fully expect Luke Schoonmaker to go in there and put up 80% of what Jake Ferguson did last year, and to be a streamable, startable tight end. So, if you have deeper rosters, you can stash him and kind of as like a potential handcuff, because, the tight end position for the Cowboys could be the number 2 targeted player for them. And so that could be Schoonmaker if something happens to Ferguson. So there you have it, guys. Dynasty followers, the biggest over the last 30 days. Give us a like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you think about these, if you agree with them falling or not. Appreciate you all, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.